Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are looking at a profoundly high-stakes proposal currently circulating in international policy circles. And honestly, this is something that could literally rewrite the rules of global power as we know them. We're going to unpack a new draft from the ABDSI Futures Group that's headed straight for the United Nations. It is essentially a comprehensive framework designed to create a binding international constitution for the digital age, and it tackles some of the absolute most urgent tech challenges of our time.
Okay, let's dive into this with a quote directly from the opening of the proposal itself. When machines govern without a mandate and humans watch without power, the problem is not technological, it is constitutional. Wow, that really sets the stage, doesn't it? The proposal is basically arguing that we're facing an existential threat here, not just from the code itself, but from our collective failure to actually govern that code. They aren't framing this as just some tech glitch that needs a software patch. No, they're calling it a full-blown crisis of human rights and state sovereignty that requires a massive, constitutional-level intervention. To help make sense of this pretty dense academic UN document, we've broken it down into 6 logical chapters for you. We'll cover the constitutional tech crisis, voluntary pledges versus binding laws, protecting digital sovereignty, keeping humans in charge, taxing the algorithms, and finally, the 2026 UN showdown.
Let's jump into Section 1, the constitutional tech crisis, machines without mandates. So the core problem here isn't actually the AI itself, but rather the total lack of a global constitution to properly manage it.
The main argument here is that while the international community totally knows they need to act, current efforts are, well, essentially just handshakes. The big concern is that machines are starting to govern our lives. They're making huge decisions about our finances, our societies, without any sort of democratic mandate. Meanwhile, we humans are just watching, without the power to hit the brakes. The APDSI Futures Group points out that yes, current global agreements exist, but they completely lack real legal force. And that paves the way for their incredibly bold solution: a binding UN charter that will be up for debate at the 2026 Charter Review Conference.
Moving right along to Section 2, voluntary pledges versus binding laws, giving the UN teeth. We really need to explore the massive gap between what the UN is currently doing and what this brand new proposal actually demands.
And this brilliantly illustrates that stark contrast. On the left side, you've got the 2024 Global Digital Compact, which relies purely on voluntary commitments and good practices. Basically, they're just suggestions. But on the right side, the 2026 APDSI proposal takes that exact same consensus and completely transforms it into binding normative law. It literally turns those good intentions into inalienable digital rights with actual legal teeth.
Which brings us to Section 3, Protecting Digital Sovereignty, looking at Articles I and IV. This introduces the very first major pillars of this new digital constitution, which is all about protecting a nation's sovereignty in the digital realm. The authors make a genuinely fascinating comparison here, and I want you to think about physical land for a second. A sovereign state obviously cannot just sell off its territory to a private corporation, right? Well, the proposal argues that by that exact same logic, a state cannot relinquish its digital territory either. Digital sovereignty is an inalienable right of a state. It is absolutely not something that can just be signed away in a commercial contract with a massive tech giant. And the document gets incredibly specific about these crucial protections. Those notorious lock-in clauses by tech suppliers, completely null and void under international law. Every state gets a guaranteed right to audit and migrate their digital infrastructures. But it goes way beyond just servers. It introduces this idea of cognitive sovereignty. This is basically your right, the public's right, to unmanipulated, diverse information, which is absolutely crucial for a functioning democracy. To protect this, the proposal suggests classifying major platforms as public interest infrastructure, meaning algorithmic transparency would become completely mandatory.
Let's transition to Section 4, Keeping Humans in Charge, covering Articles 2 and 3. This tackles the next critical question of who actually holds the reins when machines start making decisions.
When an algorithm fails, who is responsible? I want you to just pause and let that vital question sink in for a moment. When an autonomous system makes a decision that harms someone or violates a right or just totally fails, who's actually on the hook? The programmer? The CEO? The machine itself? Well, according to the draft, the answer is punchy, definitive, and totally unapologetic. The human who deployed it. Responsibility can never, ever be delegated to an algorithm.
So the crucial point is that a visible chain of accountability is fundamentally required for a democracy.
The proposal places liability squarely on the human or the institution that actually chose to deploy the system, rather than just the original designer. If you're using AI for public decisions, human audits and oversight are mandatory. And here's the real kicker. You literally cannot use the excuse that an AI was too complex to dodge liability. Technical unpredictability doesn't let you off the hook. Political choices must never be hidden by autonomous systems. Public decisions have to remain traceable, meaning elected officials simply cannot hide behind a machine.
Now let's pivot to the economic reality of the digital age. In Section 5, taxing the algorithms based on Article 5. Let's see how this charter plans to actually protect the human workforce. The authors walk through a very clear economic pipeline to capture the value of automation. First, a machine replaces a human worker. Second, that machine continues to generate massive economic value. Third, under this charter, that newly created value is taxed proportionally. This basically closes the loophole where automated labor escapes the tax systems that human labor has traditionally financed. Finally, that revenue is directed straight into funding social protection and retraining programs for the very people displaced by the automation.
Now, don't worry, the proposal is very careful to clarify its stance here. The goal isn't to stop technological advancement or penalize innovation. Progress is a good thing. It's simply trying to prevent the exclusive hoarding of that new wealth. The idea is that the benefits of innovation must belong to everyone, supporting the society that allows it to operate in the first place.
And that brings us to the final and definitely most provocative section of the explainer. Section 6, the 2026 UN Showdown, covering Article V and the future. This really elevates the stakes to global geopolitical domination. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it introduces an incredibly heavy concept into international law: algorithmic coloniality. The document defines this as a condition where a state is, in practice, governed by autonomous systems designed in completely different jurisdictions. Basically, a population's daily life is being dictated by foreign values that they never actually negotiated. The argument here is stark. If you rely entirely on foreign algorithms, you are essentially losing your national independence.
And the proposal takes this concept to its absolute extreme. It boldly argues that using technological dependency as an instrument of political or economic pressure should be strictly prohibited. In fact, they are impartially reporting a stance that says leveraging this dependency should be treated under international law as equivalent to the threat or use of force. Think about that. They are literally equating the weaponization of outside technology to military coercion.
As this framework heads toward a potential massive debate at the 2026 UN Charter Review Conference, it leaves us with the ultimate constitutional challenge of our era. The entire proposal boils down to this single mic-drop question. Power must have an owner. So as we look to the future, who holds the algorithm? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I will see you next time.